Hey there, welcome to The Working Actor on the Workbook. Hope you guys all had a great week so far. Today, we are going to tap into the world of not only acting, but producing. So, we're going in front and behind the scenes. And also, if you do have one of those films or those projects that you always wanted to pitch, but you're wondering how to go about getting financing, well, this is the series for you because we are meeting with Jayce Barreiro, who's from BC, talking about all those things that I mentioned and so much more. He started off as an actor. Now he's also a producer, co-founder of Big Picture. He's here with us on The Working Actor. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to this world of television and film, because it's an amazing world, but it's a hard world to break into. So what attracted you to it?
For me, it's a very interesting story. I kind of tripped and fell into the business. A friend of mine was an actor on a series when I was in my late teens. He was one of the leads in the series, and he said, "Hey, look, we're actually looking for a new character, a young Hispanic character to come into the show, and we've been doing a wide search." I wasn't an actor at that point. I had acted in high school in certain things that I always loved and had a passion for it. But I went and auditioned, no agent, nothing, and I just kind of showed up and I auditioned. And while I was there in the room, I landed this recurring role on this TV show. And so, they pull me aside into the office and they're like, "Great. Well, who's your agent?" And I'm like, agent? What? Right. And they're like, "You don't have an agent?" I'm like, I don't have an agent." So they're like, "Here's the top 5 agencies in the city. You should go see one because you're going to need an agent." And so I just kind of picked the first one on the list and off I went. And I walked into this, agency called The Characters. And I just walked
Yeah.
up to the front and I said, "Hi." I was so naive at that point in green. And I said, "Hi, I'm looking for an agent." And the lady in the front was like, "Excuse me?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I need an agent." And she's like, "Oh, you're going to have to submit your work and, go through the normal things that actors go through to get an agent." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, thank you." And I started walking away. I go, "I just landed this show and they told me that I need an agent," as I walked away. And she goes, "Wait, wait, wait. You just landed a show and you need an agent? Come
Right.
right in." And at that point, an amazing gentleman named Timon Stewart, who wasn't the president of characters at that point, was still an agent, came out and met with me. And I told him my story. And he said, "Hold on a second," put me in a boardroom, came in with some sides for Seinfeld out of all things, and said, "Memorize this. I'll be back in a little while." So he left for about 15 minutes. He walked back in, and I had memorized all the lines for all the characters. That's how I didn't know what was going on. And he goes, "No, no, no, I just needed you to memorize, one character." But he said, "Hey, listen, you have a gig. We're going to welcome you in." And that was it. That was the start of my acting career. I started auditioning and started landing roles. Eventually, because of a motor vehicle accident I got into, I kind of stepped away from the acting industry, and I started an advertising agency. And so I got behind the camera. We were doing a lot of television commercials, etc., but I always missed acting. And then around 8 years ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you miss it. You need to go back." I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'll do it some other time. We're so busy, all the commercials and everything." And he was like, "No, you need to go back." And I was like, "Yeah, but I kind of, I left the agency. I don't know if Timon will even, talk to me at this point." And um, he just started driving. Next thing I know, we were in front of characters. He said, get out, go upstairs and go talk to them." And I walked upstairs, and once again, Timon welcomed me with open arms. And I've been with the character since then, and still do some acting, even while I'm producing film.
What an incredible story. First of all, you mentioned characters, you mentioned Timon. Timon is a great friend of the Casting Workbook family. We've had him on many times. We
Great
were
guy.
just in Whistler and he was on a segment with us as well. So, I mean, everybody who tunes into the working actor wants to get in front of Timon, right? They want to be represented by the characters. Here
Mhm.
you are, a young, ambitious guy trying acting for the very first time, nailing your audition, getting a series, and then getting in front of his face. And he's telling you, "I'm going to welcome you in with open
Yeah.
arms." I mean, when did you not know that you were talented? Because why didn't you pursue this sooner?
It was just a set of circumstances, and you know, it's interesting. I was speaking to a young Latina talent last week, and she said, "Look, you know, I want to get into acting. I want to get into producing. What do I need to do?" And I said, the first thing is never let anybody tell you that you can't, or never let yourself tell yourself that you're not capable, you're not worthy of it. And I think that was a situation with me. I always saw it like, this is beyond me. I wish I could be an actor. I wish I could be a producer, but there was a little voice inside me being like, "No, you don't belong in that world. It's not for you." And if I could go back and change anything, would be not to listen to that voice and push forward. Because if you put the work in and you believe in it, then there's a path. There's always a path to find success in this industry.
So you were saying that he gave you a script to read and you remembered all of the lines. And I know that you're still acting and you're also very successful at producing films as well. But what was it about memorizing the lines and just getting a knack of feeling the script that you felt very comfortable with? And what can you share with the actors who are tuning in, or maybe some tips on how you can help them, or some little hacks?
Sure thing. For me, it's just about being yourself within the character.
Mm.
When I started, I felt like I was trying to portray whatever my vision of that character was, until I really understood. And I understood this after kind of listening to a lot of different podcasts and casting directors, where they're like, we're not looking for this vision of yourself. We're looking for you, because there's only one you out there. And so once I kind of did that transition where I said, look, I'm going to do the lines, I'm going to memorize them, but I'm going to do them as Jayce within this character, then that's when I felt like things started coming a lot easier to me, and it all kind of clicked and made sense. And to be honest with you, I found more success in bookings and callbacks and things of the sort.
I'm writing all that down. That's very inspiring. So you said that obviously you're still acting, but then you kind of transitioned to behind the scenes. So what was it about behind the scenes that you wanted to explore?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, I kind of when I lived in Toronto, we started an advertising agency. I was in the music industry for a while, transitioned to the advertising world, but I always missed it. I always missed being back in front of the camera. There was always a plan for us to produce film at some point. And then right before COVID is when the company really had an opportunity to make their first film.
Mhm.
And, you know, as you said, always very ambitious. I went out, we found the financing, an amazing film came to us, and we just made it work. You know, it's always been a situation for me and my team about, you know, let's figure out a way to get these things done. You know, there's always a path as long as we put the work in.
So how do you think your background in acting helps or influences you as a producer?
Oh, it helps me so much. First of all, one of my favorite aspects of producing is the casting process.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm extremely involved in all the films that we're doing. You know, we're casting one right now with JJ Ogilvy and Sean Cossey, and you know, I'm so involved in the entire process. I appreciate the actor. I
Yeah.
appreciate the struggles of the actor. I know how nervous you can be in an audition, and also in the room in person. So when I see the actor, I always take time to just be like, hey, you know, we're just a bunch of friends here, and we're just doing something fun and creative, and let's play and let's have fun, and don't stress at all, because we're no different than you. And we really are. I'm no different than them. I'm just somebody that's also making movies, you know,
Mhm.
behind the camera as well.
Yeah. Do you ever get the itch to want to cast yourself where you're like, oh, I'd be perfect for that role?
It's funny. People always ask me that. I have this weird thing where I feel like I shouldn't unless it's the perfect role. So I haven't done it yet.
Mhm.
On our last film, Night Comes, which we're going to chat about,
Yep.
the director, Jay Hernandez, I was just sitting there, you know, in the producer's tent, and he all of a sudden he called me and he's like, hey man, I kind of feel like the mom in this movie, she needs a husband. He just this and do a few lines. And I was like, so it was kind of like on the spot, but I would never dream of forcing myself into a film if it didn't belong, if the character didn't make sense, you
Or you
know?
need to save money and you got to do two jobs. There you
Yeah.
go.
I'll do that, right?
Okay.
If we lose an actor gets sick and I have to step in, I'm
Yeah.
all over.
Okay, so we'll count on you for that. But when
Yeah.
you are going about choosing the films that you want to back, what is it that speaks to you? Because I'm sure you can't choose everything. You've got to, obviously, it has to resonate with you a
Yeah.
month. Yeah. So how do you go about it?
We are pretty agnostic in the films that we make. We like to make films that we would love to watch and that we could see succeed. However, we're an investor-based company, so we always have to keep in mind that the packaging is very important, the distribution is very important, and it has to be a commercially viable film. I'd love to get to the point where we're doing a festival darling, where it's almost like a philanthropic kind of, we know we're not going to make money on this one, but our company still depends on making returns for our investors. This is the business of independent film. So we always have to make sure that the packaging is right, that the film is right, and that we love the script. It starts with a great script always.
Yeah, well, a lot of actors or writers, screenwriters, their dream is to make their own movies, right? And I'm sure if they're watching right now, they're probably going to be like, I'm going to send him my screenplay. But are there any red flags that stand out to you when you do get a script in your hand?
Um, yeah, if there's no kind of progress, if it's just like a raw script and I could tell that there hasn't been any kind of business behind it, is what I would call it,
Mhm.
right? Then at that point, I would probably tell them, look, go make sure that you start building a little bit of business behind this. We always ask them, do you have any other financing besides what you're asking us for? We're always looking for scripts or projects that have, other producers attached as well, or have some kind of cast attached as well. And that kind of makes them more interesting for us. And if there's a film, a lot of times we get films that, for example, need finishing funds. And there's a lot of reasons why you would need finishing funds. But sometimes that could also be a red flag.
Mhm.
What happened? Why did it go over
Exactly.
budget?
Yeah.
There has to be something that happened along the way that didn't let you meet your budget. But there's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's just innocent. Sometimes the film just went over budget,
Right.
and they're an interesting investment for us.
But making film is hard and very expensive, and everybody needs that one person to believe in them in order to make their dream film come true. So, has that ever happened to you where you read something and you're like, it didn't have any backing, it didn't have a producer, but you believed in it so much?
It's happened several times, to be honest. People reach out to me on LinkedIn sometimes, and they have amazing projects. And a lot of the relationships that I've made have been through LinkedIn or just somebody cold calling. I don't not read a script because it doesn't come from a literary agent, or if it seems great, if the pitch is fun, I will give it a chance. I would say our latest movie, Marshmallow, that we're doing now
Mhm.
kind of really came from nowhere. And it was just pitched to me over a dinner. And I said, that sounds really funny and really cool. And I think the market needs a good, funny comedy. And off we went and we started developing it.
Oh my goodness, this is so
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so let's talk about some of the films that have already wrapped or you've been behind. You have Night Comes, which is a thriller that just recently wrapped that stars Alexander Ludwig. And
Mhm.
then you've got a raunchy comedy with Steve Buscemi and Johnny Knoxville. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
That one is actually called Marshmallow.
That
Now,
one is
yeah,
Marshmallow now. Okay.
that was Marshmallows. So I'll start with Tiger Mom, which was a Ken Jeong comedy about a family that's from immigrated from China, that over the years have lost their way, I would say, and the teenagers are kind of out of control. The mom feels like she's lost, control of her kids. Her husband is a software, a game developer, spends all his time in his gaming world. And she feels like her life is falling apart and she's not achieving, what her parents hoped for her when she came to America. And in her desperation, she ends up finding the school called the Tiger Academy that will, rectify your kids and turn them into the perfect A level students. And once she takes them there, she finds out it's a little bit more like a cult, and they don't let them out and they don't let them escape. And it's kind of a bit of a dark comedy, but yeah, super fun movie. And I think it's getting released pretty soon.
So was that film like were you given that film and you had to take it from the beginning to end, or did you get involved after it was cast?
And no, interestingly enough, we were in the process of developing what became Night Comes. At that point, we met some other producers from LA that wanted to co-produce Night Comes with us during that time. And then they said, you know what, we have this amazing comedy that we're working on as well. We're going to shoot it in Atlanta. It's an Asian-based comedy. You know, the problem with Atlanta is that there's not a lot of Asian actors. I go, well, we have a lot of Asian actors in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And it just made sense. I'm always trying to bring productions to Canada. That's one of my main things. If it can be shot in Vancouver, if it can be shot in Canada, then you probably have a better chance of having us invest in the film.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that comes first and foremost. Now, look, if the movie's about Mexico or if it's, you know, then it has to be shot in Mexico or Colombia or whatever. But we always try, if it makes sense, we always try to, you know, shoot the movie here locally, just because we love bringing, you know, giving back to the industry,
Yeah.
and we don't mind sleeping in our own beds either.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we're so proud of being Canadian, but a lot of the talk around Hollywood is that Canada does have some of the best film crews, and we're so
In the
easy to
world,
work with
in the world. I mean,
in the
globally,
world.
globally, our crews are top notch.
Yeah.
And you know, and I've seen it. I've gone and I've worked in other places and I've scouted many other countries. And look, the other countries are definitely coming up and they have some great crews. But I would say Canada probably has better crews than the US, dare I say, you
Dare
know,
you say,
dare I
especially
say.
now.
Am
Say
I
it
getting in trouble for
proudly.
that one? Yeah,
Say it proudly. Can we talk a little bit about Night Comes? It's a thriller.
sure.
So what's that about?
Night Comes is a film about these two young girls who survive this apocalyptic event where the world is essentially wiped out. They're 5 and 9 years old when this you know event happens. They're left alone to fight off these horrific creatures that essentially come out of the earth every few thousands of years and wipe out humanity. So the backstory is like when the Mayans disappeared, when the Atlanteans disappeared, and you know nothing was left. It's because these things actually came out from the earth and wiped everything out. They ate them all clean. And so fast forward to present day, they're survivors. They think they're alone. At this point, they're, I think, 19 and 15 years old and still fighting off these creatures that tried to kill them every night. But they've kind of developed a system on how to survive. And all of a sudden, a boy shows up
Mm.
and messes everything up even worse.
Ah,
And sometimes us boys will.
I'm
And yeah, it's a really fun comedy. It's starring Daphne Keane, who people will know from Deadpool Wolverine. She's the new A23 or the younger Wolverine. And Samantha Lorraine as well, who is will be seen as the new Dora the Explorer in the trilogy, the Nickelodeon trilogy coming out. Yeah.
I can't wait to see all of these films so far. So you've done really well for yourself as you transition from the actor to the producer. So what advice would you give to actors who are looking to make this transition?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, look, be curious, ask questions. You know, don't be afraid to reach out to other producers because you'd be surprised how open people are to kind of share their knowledge
Mhm.
and bring you in. I kind of addressed this earlier. I was always like, there's no spot for me. There's no place for me. How dare I speak to a producer? You know, I'm just an up and coming actor and, you know, they won't want to talk to me. I was completely wrong. You know, I spoke to a producer early in my producing career out of Alberta, and his words always stuck by me. He goes, "Hey man, look, I was just best friends with Ricky Schroeder. I just hung out with him, you know, on set all the time. And now, you know, I'm producing 10 films this year." He said, if I can do that, you can do it. And that stuck with me. And that was kind of the driving force for me to, you know, start my producing career. So if I can do it, you guys can definitely do it.
I love that. And with that, we're going to end on that note because it's on a positive high. I love it. We are so happy that you made time for us here on The Working Actor. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.